Hello, my name is Richard McLemel, and today...
Come on, Ricky.
Hello, Richard from budgetguitarist.com. Today, part 3, we're going to do the truss rod adjustment, we're going to do the action, we're going to do the intonation, we're going to do the pickup height. So tools. We don't need our automatic string winder today. We're going to need our Allen wrench to adjust our truss rod. And if you're like me, you have approximately 59 different wrenches. So the good news for me is I put a piece of blue tape around all of the wrenches that I need for guitar usage. So see, they all have blue tape to signify that I use these for guitar. The problem is, I don't know which one fits the Strat, so it won't be that, won't be this. It's going to be one of these guys. There's probably a better way to keep your stuff organized. You know, this is going to be too little. That's too little. This is going to be too big. No, actually, that's the guy. Okay. So do as I say, don't do as I do. It'd be a good idea to label your wrenches, like put them in a plastic baggie with a label for which guitar, which thing goes with which guitar. That's a good idea. So I'm going to need that. I'm going to need the wrench to adjust these guys. And I believe that's this guy right here. Let's see. Yep. So good. I got that one. I got that one. I'm going to need glasses because I'm going to need a measuring device to check things like pickup height. So I got two different ones here. I've got a 10/1000 of an inch feeler gauge, which is exactly what you need to adjust the truss rod. Got a screwdriver for adjusting the pickup heights. Got a capo for doing the neck straightness, the neck relief. I've got a pick. And then what you don't see is back here, right here, I have got an HX stomp and it is set to tuner. And I've got a cable here, so when we go to set intonation and stuff like that, we're going to need to tune the instrument, and we're going to do that, right? Cool, let's get started. So step 1 is to adjust the straightness of the neck. So here's the concept. When you pluck a string, the string's going to vibrate. And if you understand how physics work, or even if you don't, what you can understand is that somewhere around the center of the string's going to have its maximum movement, and it's not going to move very much down here, not going to move very much down here. So where it has its maximum movement, we don't want it banging up and down on the frets because that'll make a buzzing sound. So in theory, when you play guitar, the string shouldn't be vibrating up and down so much as side to side. However, you know, we're not machines in how we pick and how we play, so there will be some up and down movement of the string, depending on how you play. You know, if you're playing with really bad technique, you probably are bouncing the string off the fret. So what you want to do when you play is you kind of want to be picking like this angle. But you know, then there's all kinds of different picking things where you can pick faster if you tilt the pick, and just never mind. A good general rule of thumb is you put a capo on the first fret, by the first fret I should say, so see how I've got that, right? And then what you're going to do, you're going to hold down the last fret. Now there's a couple of different ways to do this. Some people hold down the last fret. Some people hold down the fret where the neck meets the body. And there's different pros and cons, so you can do whatever you want. I learned this way, so I'm going to do it this way. So I'm just going to hold this down. And then on the 8th fret, what I want to do is take this feeler gauge, and as I put this between the fret and the low E string, I want to just barely feel the string and the fret. If I have to force it in there, like apply pressure, if the string moves at all, if it moves up, then that means there's not enough relief in this neck. In other words, the neck is too straight. And some people like that, but most players do not. Most players like a little bit of relief because it gets rid of a little bit of buzzing. Nobody likes buzzing. Nobody I know. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Here's the guy. So what I want to do is just kind of And what this should be doing, again, this should be just barely touching the string and just barely touching the fret. If it's not touching both of them, there's too big of a gap. If it's pushing the string up, then there is not enough of a gap. And because I've done this a million times, this is actually perfect. So there we go. Now, why do you want to do this first? Why don't you do your next straightness at the very end? Well, simple. If you adjust the truss rod, it's going to have an impact on your intonation. If you don't remember anything else about guitar setup, do your intonation last. So in general, what I like to do is truss rod, action, pickup height, and then intonation. How much the order matters? Just as long as you do intonation last. Otherwise, you're going to be chasing your tail. You're going to be going back and forth. Anyway, our neck is pretty straight. Let's do the action. So the question is, when you're setting action on a Strat, how high or how low should the action be? And the answer is, it depends. Do you like a higher action? Do you like a lower action? If you get one of these handy dandy tools, like this is from Cruise Tools, which is like an expensive set of tools, and then this is like an internet special cheapie, it's called Baroque. But the nice thing about both of them is that, hard to see, you can kind of see here, but not really. And then also this guy here, they both have information on the back, like a cheat sheet that tells you what some good action levels are. So for example, electric guitar, 6th string, they say you want to be between 0.059 inches and 0.79 inches, right? Since we're talking about thousandths of an inch, I like to just round the numbers to 0.06 and 0.08. And if you're using millimeters, that would be 1.5 versus 2. So then I've got a string gauge here, and I would highly recommend one of these. And the string gauge has got, man, it is so hard to do this because that light is right there. I'm going to bring it down here. No, there's no good way to do it. You can kind of see it here. It's got little markings. And so instead of like, measuring it like this way with this little ruler, I can look at the little markings, which is what I'm going to do. That's what these are for. So what I'm shooting for here is I'm shooting for 1.5 millimeters. No, I'm going to set my action a little on the high side here. So I'm going to go 2 millimeters on this string, and I'm going to go about 1.5 millimeters on the high E string. So 2 and 1.5. To adjust string height, we're going to adjust these two saddles. Now in a traditional Stratocaster, you're going to have these bent steel saddles, but they're going to have 2 screws just like this. The only difference between that and this is Graphtec, and so it's super slippery. And I like these. They do take a little high end off the Strat, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. So the most important thing to know about these guys is when you adjust these, you really have to make sure that they are flat. So what you don't want to do, say this is like the top, right? You don't want to, I'm going to exaggerate, you don't want to go like that. You don't want to angle these where one side is higher than the other, and instead of like this, you're going like this, tilting this way. And the reason you don't want to do that is because if you do that, you're going to have unequal pressure on both of these screws, which means one of them is going to come loose, which means your action is going to get messed up, right? So you want these to be flat, just like a table, right? Parallel to the body of the guitar. So I'm going to see if I can do an extreme close-up here, fancy camera angle. Let's see if we can pull this off, because if I do it on one string, you'll get the idea. No, I won't have to do it on all of them. Now we're going to be measuring at the 12th fret, which is right here, okay? And so I'm shooting for basically 2. Wow, that's actually going to work out pretty good. I can see, all right. So the top of the box should be touching the bottom of the string. So for example, if I slide it this way, if you look at where the 1 is, right, you can see there's space between the top of the box and the bottom of the string, right? So as I keep sliding it this way, I can see space. So kind of hard to see, but you get the idea. This is the easiest way to do this. So I'm actually going to do that at the 12th fret on all of these strings. Flip it around so it makes sense to me. Yeah, I actually made an error there. I mean, it's this fret right here. I might have said the wrong thing because it was upside down, but when you're putting your finger here, this is the 12th fret, and so this is actually the fret. I want to measure this one right here. Okay. Anywho, yep. So if that's going to be 2, and this is going to be 1.5, how do you decide what the other ones are going to be? Well, these 2 strings here should probably be somewhere around 1.75. So this is 1.5, 1.75, somewhere in between, 1.75, somewhere in between. What you want to do, and this is where it really depends on the Strat that you own, you need to know what the radius is of your fretboard. So how curved is it? If it's perfectly flat, which none of them are, but if they were, then you wouldn't have to compensate for the fretboard. We're measuring at the fret, right? So in general, what's going to happen is whatever the curvature of the board is, it should be somewhat reflected down here. Remembering, of course, as always, that these need to be parallel. You don't want one leg of the little table longer than the other. So, looking here, okay. So this guy, high E string, is definitely too high. It is definitely over 1.5. If I want to lower this string, I can just go ahead and tighten these guys a little bit. So I'm just going to give that a turn. And I'm going to get my head down here, and I'm just going to make sure that this is like parallel. Kind of wasn't to begin with. All right, that looks about right to me. If you're lowering one of these, you're reducing the pitch of the string, and you don't need to do anything with the string. However, if you need to raise one of these, you don't want to come in here and just crank it. What you want to do is detune the string, then adjust it, then retune the string. Because if you're cranking on this thing while the string is under full tension, you do risk stripping out the screws. Let's have another look. Yeah, still not low enough. So in this case, I want to go lefty-loosey. I think I tightened it last time. To lower it, I want to go to the left. There. Here the pitch went down. Maybe you didn't. Let's have a look. Definitely 1.5. All right. So if I've got my action right about where I want it to be now, so then the next step is going to be the pickup height. Now for the pickup height, what do? Well, once again, we've got a handy dandy tool here that's going to give me some starting figures. But what you can do for your guitar is check your guitar maker's website. So if it's Fender, check the Fender website, Gibson, etc., Squier, etc. They're going to have sort of like some default stock pickup heights for you to consider. And when you measure your pickup height, what you're going to do is you're going to hold the string down at the very last fret, and you're going to measure the distance between the top of whatever the pole piece is and the bottom of the string. So in my case, for Texas Specials, I think it's 8/64 and 6/64 off the top of my head. So I've got a 1/64 of an inch right where my thumb is gauge on here, so that's going to work for me. And I can see right now that this pickup is crazy low. I really need to raise this pickup. So on Strats, you're usually going to find Phillips head screws. I'm going to go in to raise it. I'm going to tighten the pickup. Is that about 8? Yeah, it's actually too much. Got to go a little lower. So I'm going to go lower it a bit. How's that looking? That's spot on. So I might as well go ahead and do these guys also while I'm in here. Interesting trick, by the way. I'm sorry, I don't mean to keep pointing at the camera. It's like what old people do. Now let me tell you, I'm going to point at you to make a point. You understand? It's kind of an old Stratocaster trick. To get more, if you like the quack sound, which is like these 2 pickups or these 2 pickups out of phase, if you like that quack sound, what some people do is they put the center pickup a little lower than normal, and supposedly that increases the quack sound. Does it? I guess that's up to you to determine. Maybe I think it does, but maybe it's an old wives' tale. I have no idea. Is old wives' tale like a sexist saying? No doubt about it. An old guitarist's tale. Regardless, I am actually going to raise this and put it at 8/64ths. If I can find the screw. So righty tighty. Of course, you can't see my exact measurements here, but you're just going to have to take my word for it that I'm actually doing it. Of course I'm doing it. Why would I bother? That's correct. And then down here, this guy could come up just a little bit. Oop. So the next question, that's good, might be, what's the difference between having the pickup close to the string and far away? The closer to the string, the louder the note's going to be and the more treble content you're going to get in general. However, if you get too close to the string, what's going to happen is the magnet is going to have a little bit more pull on the string than it should, especially with a strong pickup like something like this, right? A hot pickup. And it's going to pull on the string. That can affect the intonation. So it can actually make your guitar a little bit ever so slightly out of tune. And it can also make the note sound like weird. If you go to like Freyland's website, or, you know, a lot of these guys who have made an entire career out of studying pickups, they would tell you there's no one like number. You have to do it by ear. But I'll tell you what, it's a pretty subtle thing. So if you're not sure what numbers to use, check out your manufacturer. Or if you have one of these gauges, you usually can't go wrong just using the stock cheater default values that they give you. In general, those values will work. It's hard to say. Values will work for most guitars. And then you can adjust to taste. Okay, so I done did this side. So now I'm going to do the other side. And I'm going to go 6 in this case instead of 8. So higher. Flaming youth will set the world on fire. Oh, gee. Jeepers creepers. I'm going to have to do it like this. This isn't awkward or anything. That's 2. It needs to be actually a little lower. Yeah, this gets to be pretty awkward. I mean, okay. And then this guy, it's got to come up a bit. Just lower that guy. Okay, so the neck is straight. I like the height. We got, this is pretty good. Now we get to intonation, and guess what? On this instrument, this particular instrument, I got a problem. And I'm wondering if you can pick up what the problem is. So intonation works like this. Very, very simply. If you play a note at the 12th fret, get down here, okay? And you play at the 12th fret harmonic, ideally, they'd be the exact same pitch. And this is where you use a tuner. And so what you do to adjust your intonation is you play the 12th fret, you play the harmonic, you check your tuner, and they both need to be perfectly in tune with the tuner, and thus with each other. If the note is flat, okay, if it's flat, then that means that the string from here to here is too long and you need to decrease the distance. So how do you remember this stuff? Well, think about it this way. The low notes are down here, the high notes are right here, right? What makes this note higher than this note? The distance of the string. The shorter the distance, the higher the note. So if I want to put this note right here at the 12th fret perfectly in tune, I can adjust the length of this string by taking this saddle and moving it this way or moving it this way. If I move it toward the fret, I'm making the string shorter, which means the pitch is going to be higher. So if this note is flat, this guy's got to go this way. If this note is sharp, it means this distance is too small. If it's sharp, it's higher than I want it to be. So then this has got to go back this way. Here's the problem. On this particular instrument, I don't have any leeway here. I mean, these things like this guy right here, this saddle, is about as far as it can go because there's actually a little spring in there. I don't know if you can see it. That can't be tightened anymore. So now in general with most guitars, what you're going to see is you're going to see a pattern where it's going to kind of be farthest away, a little closer, farther away, a little closer. And this is a pattern you're going to see on most guitars, and it's just the way it works out. So actually, if you look at where the saddles end up, you can kind of see the exact same pattern. So again, how I would adjust this, normally, I want to loosen up this screw. That's going to move this saddle more this way. Tighten up this screw. It's going to move this saddle more this way. The shorter the string, the higher the pitch. The longer the string, the lower the pitch. If a note is sharp, make it longer. If a note is flat, make it shorter. By adjusting these screws back and forth, you can set the intonation. Actually, I've already set this, so I'm not going to pretend to go through these motions like in the video because I've already done it. I don't want to be dishonest. This has already been adjusted as good as I can get it. And these two saddles are pretty darn close here. So there is another tip about this though. I'm sorry, I keep pointing. It's a bad habit. There is another tip here though that I want to share. If you are loosening this screw, so lowering the pitch, okay, you don't need to detune the string. But if you start cranking up on here to raise the pitch, some people would advise you to loosen the string first. And that's probably a good idea. Right, so then obviously the next thing to do is to play it and to tune it and to play it and to tune it and to bend the strings and to tune it and to make adjustments by ear. I'm not going to bore you by tuning and playing some mediocre chords. But yeah, that's the last step, is to actually play it. And despite all of your best efforts, you might discover that maybe it's buzzing a little bit, or maybe it feels a little high, and you want to go in and kind of fine tune it. Just understand that if you go in and you change the action right now, it's very possible you're also going to have to adjust the intonation. So sometimes you do everything I just did, and then if you have to adjust the action, make sure you circle back to the intonation again. So there you go. I hope that you found this helpful. If you didn't, well, you probably didn't watch to the end of this video. Maybe you did, I don't know. Regardless, we're pretty much done setting this guy up. And next week, unless something else happens, I want to do a shootout between, where's my other Strat? My other Strat is back there in the rack somewhere. I want to do a shootout between my two Fender Strats. One has got Texas Special pickups. This one has Tex-Mex pickups. And that one has 3 single coils, and this one has a humbucker in the bridge. What are the pros and cons to these two different kinds of Texas flavored pickups? And what type of pickup configuration for a Strat would best meet your needs? And then I might even throw in a third Strat that's got some underwound Alnico 5 GFS pickups and just kind of show what that sounds like. So we've gone Stratty here at budgetguitarist.com headquarters. I think that next week's video is going to be really interesting. I hope that it is. I'm looking forward to shooting it, honestly, because it means I get to play a bunch of stuff. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again next Friday at 5.